So welcome back to episode 9 of Filling Your Toolbox, a podcast for teachers by teachers, where we dig into the many resources and supports we have available in our county to help our teachers grow and in order to help our students grow. So I'm going to jump right in. Since we all know how precious time is, and for our guests today, it's really scarce. So we'd like to welcome our very own Superintendent, Dr. Bedell.
Hello, hello.
Welcome, Dr. Bedell. Thank you for sharing your time today.
No problem, Diana. Excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. So I'm going to just jump right in. We know so much about Dr. Bedell, the leader. I am hoping that we can kind of take a little step back, and we would love to hear a little bit more about Dr. Bedell, the teacher. So, thinking about, what brought you to teaching, what made you decide you wanted to be a teacher, a little bit about your experience there.
There were a couple of experiences. I'll start off with, unfortunately, the negative experience, which was when I was in the second grade. Mm-hmm. There was a teacher who told me I was dumb, ugly, and wouldn't amount to anything. And it was in the second grade that I stopped going to school because that teacher knew that she could say those things and get away with it because nobody was coming to advocate for me. Yeah. So ultimately, that resulted in our family being split up. We became wards of the state of New York, moved in with an aunt who was able to get me back into school and get me back on track. Fast forward to my 10th grade year in high school, I had a homeroom teacher, Mr. Barrett, who would get to see my progress reports and my report card. And I was a basketball player, and I became ineligible to play basketball because I was skipping class. I'm just going to call it the way that it is. And Mr. Barrett pulled me to his desk one day and said, you're academically talented, and you don't even know it, and you're throwing it all away because you're mad at the world. You need to find somebody to talk to. So probably about 2 weeks later, I came back to Mr. Barrett when nobody was in the class during this planning period.
That's the time, right?
and I shared with him everything I was dealing with, that I was sleeping on the couch and that I was homeless and living with my grandmother and all of these things. And Mr. Barrett took me under his wings. He got me connected with a teacher, Miss Blaylock, who would eventually become my government teacher my senior year in high school. And those two teachers said something to me, I'll probably say, as I was going into my senior year. They said, you're going to teach one day. And I said, nah. I said, I'm going to the NBA. And because I really thought that's what I was going to do. But they had planted a seed in me that they saw a future educator in me that I didn't even see in myself. And then I ended up reading this book, Savage Inequalities by Jonathan Cazot. And that book kind of opened up my eyes to just the inequities and some of the things that kids had to go through. And it paralleled my life story. Wow. And those were some of the things that actually inspired me to make a decision to go into education.
Wow. That's a lot. And you said something there that really just kind of hit home a little bit. It's like you go to the teachers when there's nobody else there and it's quiet and it's, that's powerful.
And it's interesting because what people don't understand is the burden that's often placed on teachers to ultimately have to get to know and understand a kid like me who's lived through the conditions that I lived through. And Mr. Barrett didn't live through the conditions I lived through. Mr. Barrett wasn't black either. Mr. Barrett was a white man. But Mr. Barrett's heart was in the right place, right? And that's what I try to tell people. If you have educators with their hearts in the right place, it can be a game changer to any student. That's what I'm looking for. We want people in front of our kids that have lived experiences. Yep. We want minority educators in front of our kids. But I know most importantly, if your heart isn't in the right place, you can do a lot more damage to children than helping them.
That's very true. And that's a powerful story. And I think, knowing a lot of our students connect with that really closely. So thank you for sharing that. Tell us a little bit about once you became a teacher. So how did you know? When did you know? And I know you said that the Savage Inequalities book. I read that a million years ago when I was teaching in Texas, which was a wild experience. But I'm really glad to be in Anne Arundel County.
That's where I started in Texas.
Did you
as
really?
a teacher. Yeah.
Oh, whereabouts?
Houston ISD.
Okay. I was in Mathis ISD, way down about 60 miles outside of Corpus Christi. Back in the day. But it's my time here in Anne Arundel has been amazing. So I'm glad to be here. They let me do a lot of things like this, which is great. But once you decided and you knew that you wanted to be a teacher, what was your approach?
So I ran away from teaching because I was still trying to chase my hoop dreams.
Yep.
Right. I was trying out for some NBA pro camps, and I just wasn't certain or sure that I could be a good educator. So honestly, I was scared. And then something, I don't know what happened. I think I was running around and I was soliciting to companies trying to sell art. With some company, and it was such a scam because I was just driving around. I got a college degree, and I realized that this isn't what I am supposed to be doing. Like, what am I running away from? I know that I'm supposed to be teaching. So I made this decision that I would get back into school and work on my master's, but while I worked on my master's, I would begin to get some substitute experience. So I started off as a substitute teacher in Nashville Metro Schools, and I got to work at every single level. And that's where I learned what level I wasn't willing to do, which was middle school. Like I tell people, I have a deep amount of respect for middle school educators. I really do. It is something special about you all that I envy because I just did not have the patience. So I said either I would do elementary or I would do high school, which ultimately I ended up doing both. And then I eventually said, all right, I'm ready to do this. So I just went down a list of schools. My wife had gotten into law school at the University of Houston. So we were moving to Houston. And I just picked out 10 schools, didn't know where they were. Houston is huge.
Yes, it is.
And by the time I got down to the fourth one, I got on the phone with the principal. I was on Interstate 40. I pulled over, and I interviewed with her over the phone.
No kidding.
And that's how I got my first teaching job, interviewing over the phone. And then they flew me in, and I got to meet her and her team and did an in-person interview.
No kidding.
And she said to me, you were everything that I thought you would be based on the conversation I had with you on the phone. So that's how I ended up starting in Houston, working at Grissom Elementary, teaching second graders.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I know. I tell my kids now, like, it's easy when we apply for jobs and you click a button and it just apply. I said, I had to drive my resume everywhere.
Yes.
Like, I had to print it off, and I cannot even tell you how many places I've been to.
That's right.
That's funny. Oh my gosh. I can appreciate the pulling over and having an interview on this side of the road.
It's interesting, right? But to go back to making sure that I answer your question fully, I mean, I was very intimidated. You know, I got 28 little bodies in this classroom looking at me, and on my first day of teaching, I'm like, man, they all are depending on me. And I'm not certain that I really know what the heck I'm getting ready to do in here. But eventually, get through a couple of weeks, lots of support. I had a mentor teacher next door to me. My principal frequently would come down and check on me. And over the year, it slowed down. It really did. And it ended up being a really good situation for both the students and myself, just around how I really tried to I wanted teaching and learning to truly be alive in my classroom, but I also wanted to operate as a teacher who had an open door policy. I told my parents, you don't need to schedule to come. If you want to come and sit in my classroom, I have an open door policy. I have nothing to hide. So feel free to come in and see what's happening. I'm proud of what we were able to do.
Yeah. That's awesome. Actually, you hit my next question, because I was going to ask you, how do you connect? How did you go about connecting with your students and your families? And I think that's a big key. And that's a scary thing for a lot of people, is opening that door, because I think we can be intimidated, but it's such a, I think when we look at it, people are here, they want us to do well. But I think it's to support the kids, and they want to do their best to support the kids.
You're absolutely right. But you don't want what you're trying to do around being transparent then to be weaponized against you. Yeah. Because you have some people, they have certain motives And so it, as educators, require us sometimes to put our guards up when we're not certain there's a genuine interest in why you are coming to our classroom. But what I did do was how I truly bonded with my students. I did a lot of extracurricular things. So not only did I coach as one of the assistant coaches for basketball, I led the drill team at my school. I did mentoring. I did before and after school coverage, which, we didn't get paid to do all of that stuff back in the days, but I did all of it because it was an opportunity, especially during before and after school, opportunities for me to talk to all types of parents, whether they were in my class or not. So I became known as one of the faces as an elementary teacher, and then eventually would get promoted to become a department chair over the third grade at my school. So it being visible and doing those kind of things, and then also, as an educator, the same way that I built those relationships with my families and my students, I did it with my colleagues. So we did a retreat, and I won like the diversity award for bringing our staff together and really beginning to build a sense of community. So it felt like some of those leadership characteristics were there early on, and eventually resulted in me being where I am now.
And I think that's a really good point, because I feel like there's a lot of times there's a disconnect when teachers see like leaders outside of the classroom. One of the things we push is you can do so much with, being a leader starts in your classroom. Starts with your kids and then moving to those, so to that next point, if you want to, even if it's like being the PBIS chair or a team lead, but it really starts in your classroom.
Here's what I will say, and I coach a lot of people that are aspiring to become superintendents. Develop good habits when you're in the classroom, because those habits will carry over when you become a department chair, when you become an assistant principal. They carry all the way up to you being a superintendent. Develop those habits now, and that way it's second nature by the time you are put in a position where you are in a key executive leadership role. And then the most important thing I try to coach people on too is don't lose the perspective, because oftentimes what ends up happening is we move up here and we lose perspective of the struggle and how hard it was to be in that classroom. And you can't do that. And it's a different kind of hard up here than what you deal with in the classroom. But it's hard, right? It's hard. But you still cannot lose that perspective, because then you end up losing the locker room.
Yeah, that's a big point. That's amazing that you said that. I know that there's a lot of us that think that, like, there's a disconnect, and there's different. Heart is different in different places, but it's the keeping that perspective from the classroom is so important, which is why I was so excited that you granted us this time today to talk about that a little bit, and you kind of led right very nicely into this next little question I have, which is, throughout your tenure as a leader everywhere, but even going back to, like you said earlier, like starting in your classroom, what have you noticed over the course of your tenure in education? What makes a really, truly impactful teacher? And I know you said before, the heart is where it starts.
Yeah, the heart is where it starts, right? You want kids to feel that they're going to be in a safe space. Regardless of how they show up, when they come into your classroom, they feel like they belong. And what I have seen that has really, to me, made our jobs a lot harder is a lot of the divisiveness that exists just nationally in this country, and how that plays out in our classrooms, right? So whether it's conservative kids feeling like they don't belong, or LGBTQ plus kids feeling like they don't belong, or marginalized kids feeling like they don't belong. We have some classrooms in this school district where every kid, regardless of how they show up, will walk out and say, it is a pleasure being in that teacher's classroom because of the culture and climate that they establish. When somebody comes up in that office to meet with me, and I've had them all in my office, I've had probably every entity, and I'm talking about opposing groups who are at each other's necks. And I say to them when they leave, what did you feel when you left out of my room, out of my office, right?
Yeah.
And they say, I felt heard, I felt valued.
Yeah.
I felt like you were sincere in wanting to try to get to the bottom of what the concerns are. And I said, so that's what we want the experience to be for everybody, right? It shouldn't be about if I have this flag or that flag or that flag or this banner or that banner, right? If you walk in my room and my culture and climate is right, regardless of who you are, you're gonna feel like you're a part of it. Yeah. And I think the greatest educators know how to do that. They know how to build a sense of community because their hearts are in the right place. And we're not exempt from what happens in corporate America, where you have sometimes 7 to 10% of some of these people are just bad eggs. It's everywhere. I hate that, and you don't want that in front of kids. It's kind of like that second grade teacher I talked to you about at the beginning. Yeah. I got into the field of education to make sure that those kind of people weren't in front of children. That's just being honest with you. That was part of my motivation, so that lady and people like her don't hurt kids like the way that I've been harmed in the system as a result. And so that to me is the big part about being a great teacher. Heart just got to be in the right place.
Absolutely. So keeping with that theme, we talk about belong, grow, succeed as our system mantra. What advice or tips do you have for teachers that are seeking ways? They're coming from all over now. We're not just getting the teachers right out of college anymore that went to college to learn, to be teachers. They're coming from everywhere. What advice or tips do you have that they're seeking ways to belong here in a different, a different experience? Like they want to be teachers, but what can we do to help them belong or help them find ways?
It's not that hard, right? I think everybody has interests. So part of what we have to do is figure out who can we get in touch with that have interests that I can build a relationship with. So for me, it's basketball. Yep. So I have made a number of connections across this county, whether it's going to a Severna Park on Tuesday nights, the Severna Park Rec Center to play with people from around the county, or going to a Broadneck High School on any given day, or just going to some rec center out in the community. I have leveraged basketball and my love for basketball to build my community of people that then I can sit back after we get through playing and we can just talk. Right. And I think we have to look at, there's a lot of social groups that people can form where they can say, hey, if a book club, maybe it's a district level book club or a cluster level book club with people that are interested in wanting to do that. But we have to have people willing to say, let me be the innovator, let me be the initiator, let me be the one to get this started. And it could even be as easy as, we got people here that I know they love to do fantasy sports. Yep. Fantasy football, when football starts. Think about if we had several people who were willing to serve as managers to do like a fantasy football league, and you got different people across the county who wants to be a part of that. Now you're building this network of people who can support you and help you with some of the social and emotional wants and needs that we all long for as adults. So that's the reason why I have really focused on this reorg of phase 2 to create this systemic student and systemic supports position. I have a chief that will be over that, and their job is to focus on culture and climate. And to focus on the social, emotional, and academic well-being of not just the students, but of us as adults. So there's going to be some things that are going to be coming down that I think will help to build this sense of community and really make us feel like a family. I did these things in Kansas City. I did twice a year. We would do like an intramural day. And we would have everybody from around the whole district show up and descend on the school. And we would do volleyball tournaments. We would do basketball tournaments. People would do, they would do a 2K or 3K in the indoor track. We had spades, dominoes, board games. It was awesome. This district is so big. So in order to do some of those things, we might have to look at it being clustered. Right. But these are the kind of activities that I ultimately would love to be able to bring to Anne Arundel County.
I think that's great. Like that, I know, like, events like that, they seem to happen one-off sometimes. Like, we did a Bates 5K. I remember once upon a time when I was there, and I know they did it periodically after that. And it does. Those types of events bring people together. So I love that. Everybody's into fantasy football.
I mean, a lot
Baseball.
of people are. Yeah.
So that's.
But these are little things.
Yeah.
And those little things become
bigger and bigger.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it's just, just having that space where somebody can go and find like their people. Like where is that space? And then it kind of, networks out. And I think that's been a big thing for me here. Coming to Anne Arundel County, I was always afraid that I was going to, we traveled a bit. My husband was in the Navy. And we were never in one place. I thought it was going to be so hard for me to find a job. When I came here, they said, no, having that exposure, having that experience in so many different places really kind of opened it up and made me feel comfortable going from Corcoran to Bates to Meade Middle. And, I tell everybody, I loved every school that I've been in. And having the experience now to be able to go to all these different schools and work with all these different teachers is it brings me so much joy, but I always want to know what are those other things that I can do for the teachers to help the students, and making our teachers feel more welcome will impact our kids eventually. Because when you're a happier teacher.
But you know what it does too? It helps with retention.
Mm-hmm. And that's what we're all about.
Yeah, be a part of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was opening up the school years in Kansas City. I would say prior to COVID. We were opening up the school year with under 10 vacancies.
Oh my God.
In one of the hardest school districts to staff in the country, because it's just, Kansas City is hard.
Yeah.
But I remember we were at 7 one year, and I think we had got that number down to 5. The year of COVID, we opened up with 5 vacancies, and then, of course, after COVID, man.
Yeah.
It got ugly.
I mean, it's been drastic. And I know that's my focus every day is teacher retention.
Yes.
And what we can do to kind of help those teachers stay and want to stay and grow. So that's exciting things. I'm really excited for a lot of the things that are coming down the pike. And I know we hear whispers and things that are happening. So it's really exciting, especially with the new strategic plan that's going to be coming out pretty soon. I've been watching the Facebook pages and all the pictures
coming.
of you guys working on it.
We have May 13th. We'll be doing a workshop for the community on it, and then we'll bring it to the board for May 15th for them to vote on it.
That's exciting. Lots of changes.
Yes.
Good things. All good things. Is there anything else that you would like to, you think our teachers should know about Dr. Bedell?
Well, I mean, just about me, I mean, my goal is I'm working hard to try to figure out a way to really incentivize teachers to stay in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Part of what has happened in education is our educators don't make enough money.
Mm-hmm.
And what ends up happening is if some of our educators have a growing family or they take on a mortgage or a car note, now they're having to scramble. They're having to work 2 jobs. They're having to moonlight, do these kind of things. And the reality is, I have said this in multiple venues. My wife will tell everybody that my happiest time in life was when I was in the classroom as an educator. And I will agree with her. I was selfish around how much I wanted to be around my kids that I came to work one day so sick that the assistant principal had to take me home because I felt like I was letting my kids down. Like that was, now I know, now looking back in retrospect, that was real selfish because I'm coming to school with probably the flu and I'm giving it to everybody. But you're young and you don't know any better.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't want to miss, but that was the joy that I had. And so I would not have left the classroom if I was making more money.
Yeah.
We ended up having 2 kids back to back in 2002 and 2003, and my wife was still in law school in her second and third year.
Oh, wow.
And managed to get through law school, but I had to leave the classroom to become an assistant principal to take care of my family. Yeah. So now what I'm really trying to work on now is this career ladder. And I think we have something designed for people who want to enter into it, because there are some people who say, I'm not interested in that. I want to stay on the same scale that I have, and you are more than welcome to. But for people who don't want to leave and want to become an administrator but still want to stay in the school, we're going to have something potentially in place that can be a game changer to keep some of our most talented educators in front of our students. And that's what I'm hoping I'll be able to do as we continue to make adjustments and changes to this county to make us one of the most attractive school districts to work for.
That's awesome. And it's hard to leave the classroom. I'll never forget when I got when I got the call that I was accepted to be Right Start, I cried like a baby. It's like, I'd been teaching 6th grade as a department chair, and my principal was like, "That's wonderful. Why are you so sad?" I was like, "I don't know if I want to leave." You get so attached to your kids.
Yes.
You get there really is, and I know teaching is the hardest. I think it is the hardest job out there.
It's so hard.
But when it's good, it's rewarding. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. And I love that with the position I have now, I get to still go into a classroom and teach with kids. So there's something to that, but there's always that little in the back of your brain that's like, I'd love to go back into my own little classroom. But thank you so much for sharing that. I am so grateful that we've gotten to have you here today. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I'm really hoping that you'll come back again and do this.
Sure.
Maybe down the road we'll get you again, because I know we're going to have more questions when the strategic plan comes out, and just learning more about all the changes that are coming down the pike, and who better to hear it from. So I appreciate you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate this opportunity to do this. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Bedell, for sharing your time today. Thank you for everything you do for our community, our AACPS community, and our Anne Arundel County community. And this wraps up another episode of Filling Your Toolbox. Thank you to our guests and to our teachers for joining us. As always, you can find the link to all of our episodes on the Right Start New Teacher Support X Twitter feed, and hopefully in the not too distant future, you'll find us in a few more locations. Thank you.